we today?
Good.
Excellent. So, for everyone watching, we're here today to talk about our club, Sussex Online Speakers, and our experience of Toastmasters International. Now, I wanted to just start off with a little bit of background about Sussex Online Speakers. So, we're a club that formed out of the pandemic situation because some of our members, our founding members, saw that there was lots of opportunity for people to really hone those communication and public speaking skills in an online environment, because that is the reality of the world that we live in. That just because we were thrown on there during the pandemic, it actually is what's happening in business and in people's personal lives. They're connecting through the power of online meetings. So our club is a place where people can come along, hone their public speaking, communication, and leadership skills in a safe environment, and we have lots of fun. We meet on the second and fourth Mondays of every month, and when we have a fifth Monday, we usually try and have an educational or a social event. So I am one of the club founders. I've been a Toastmaster since 2016, and I originally joined Worthing Speakers in West Sussex in the United Kingdom. And through that club, I became more familiar with the Toastmasters program. And I really loved getting involved in the club as a leader, mentoring other members, and actually stepping outside my club and supporting the wider community in Toastmasters. In my professional life, I'm a sales and operations manager for a small business, which means I basically do a little bit of everything. And that's how I like it. Alistair, we'd love to hear all about you.
Thanks, Amy. I have been a Toastmaster for almost coming up to 4 years now. Not always with Sussex Online Speakers. I've been with Sussex for 6 months. I joined with my local club, Aylesbury Speakers. And then, of course, during the pandemic, Amy already touched upon, everything sort of went online. So we ended up with this hybrid club structure, which I love. Toastmasters have been one of the best things that I've joined. And I truly believe that I wouldn't be where I am in my personal and work life now, certainly not without it. And in my work life, speaking of my work life, I am an event producer and I work on virtual events for pharmaceutical companies and other corporate events. What about you, Olga? What's your journey been like?
My journey's been exciting, Alistair. I am from Dublin in Ireland, so I joined a little local club back before the pandemic about 4 years ago, called Fingal Toastmasters. And it was all in person. Then, as you say, the lockdown happened, and that's where I came across Worthing Toastmasters, where I met Amy. And then when we all went back in person, she created Sussex Online, I think, with another couple of her colleagues. And here we are. And I'm in the club with both Amy and Alistair. In my real life, outside Toastmasters, I am a nutritionist and I sort of do consultancy work, and I do a little bit of presentations, which I think before Toastmasters, I probably would have been sitting throwing up in the corner rather than facing an audience. So it's incredible how Toastmasters has helped me in my career and in my personal life. So back to you, Amy.
Wow, I learned some new things about you just then, Olga. That was great. So we heard a little bit about when we all joined, but what inspired that initial journey for both of you? So Olga, what made you come along to a Toastmasters meeting and become a member?
Okay, well, what happened was I was doing all my nutrition study, reskilling, and I had to make presentations in college, and I did an absolute woeful job. It was online, actually. It was pre-pandemic, and it was terrible. So a friend of mine said, well, you need to go to Toastmasters. And I thought that was all about making toasts after weddings. And I said, I don't do weddings. And she said, no, go along. So I headed along, and that was my reason for going up to that door that very day. And yes, it had a massive impact on my life. The friend who came with me never went again, but I keep telling her, you changed my life. So that's my little story of what brought me to their door. Alistair.
My journey is very similar, or journey to starting. So as I mentioned, I work in events, and it didn't always used to be online and virtual events. I used to work in face-to-face, big sort of summits and training sessions. And that was absolutely fine because I loved being backstage. I loved doing all the operations, the running around of that. But every now and then a client would be like, oh, would you just announce that the lunch has changed, or announce that the times have changed, or XYZ. And at that point, I would just freeze up because it would just not be something. They'd pass me the microphone. I'd have sweaty palms. I wouldn't be ready. And I'd have to sit and like write a little post-it about everything that I was going to say. And so someone said to me, you need Toastmasters, just like they did Olga. And it took me a little while to join. I was thinking about it for maybe a year or so, but finally got to a meeting and it's helped astronomically. So there you go. There's my joining story.
I would say mine's a little bit different. I actually joined more to meet people because I'd moved to the UK about 4 or 5 months beforehand. And I was, in my later 20s, I wanted to meet new people, but I didn't want to meet them just at work, how I'd sort of met most of my friends before, or, through university and school. And I was looking around on Meetup and I'd heard of Toastmasters before. I'd seen a few meetings when I was at university of a local club. And I thought, I'll go along to that. And, that sounds like a really productive hobby. And what made me sign up, not just to meet new people, but not so much a nervous public speaker, but I am not very confident in what I have to say. So if you gave me a speech, I could learn it really quickly and get up and deliver it. And that didn't give me too much nerves. But writing my own speeches took me years to hone. And even now, I'm the kind of person who really doubts what I have to say in a speech. And I've definitely got a lot more tools and I'm a little bit fairer on myself and confident with what I have to say. But what helps is going and doing it more and more, because the more you do it, the more feedback you get. It helps keep the wheels greased, if you will. So I guess what might be interesting for some of our members listening, or some of the guests that might be interested in Toastmasters, is to understand how meetings work. So Alistair, what's your favorite part of a Toastmasters meeting? Maybe one of the roles or a section that you enjoy the most?
Thanks, Amy. My favorite part of a Toastmasters meeting is what's called table topics, which is the improv speaking. So you get given a random topic and you have to speak for 1 to 2 minutes. That has been one of the most useful things, because in meetings all the time we get asked to speak on the spot and deliver a quick update, and table topics is a great way to help us structure those things that we haven't prepared for. What about you, Olga? What's your favorite?
Well, just give you the idea of the journey. When I first went to Toastmasters, we have a role in Fingal called a guest greeter, which you stand up and welcome the guests. You have a list. That was my favorite role when I started, because I was so afraid of table topics. But now my favorite role is the actual Toastmaster, who is the MC of the occasion. So you'll do the introducing, you'll give a little background, you'll give links between the segments. You can go off on your own tangent, much to everyone's horror. But yeah, I've come round to table topics. I feel a little bit more comfortable, but I still hide at the back of the room still in this day. But I must say, as Alistair said, it's a great challenge and it really helps you. Amy, how about you?
I was wondering when both of you were talking, I'm not sure if I could have one single favorite, but I think something that maybe what I take the most value from is definitely evaluations. So we have this little saying at Toastmasters that if it moves, we evaluate it. And I cannot believe how much I've improved as a manager at work in evaluating staff and giving them feedback in the moment, or preparing, more formal feedback. And a lot of that has come through listening to and delivering evaluations in meetings. So what that means for those out there who have never been to a Toastmasters meeting is for the speeches that members give, the prepared speeches, and also for table topics, there's assigned evaluators. And those evaluators will provide constructive feedback. They'll commend the speaker on what they think they did well. They'll give some recommendations. And we try and set some challenges for speakers too. And it's not just about what you say during your verbal evaluation, but we also have project evaluation forms. So you can give a lot more feedback in that. And part of that process is you're actually honing your presentation skills as well, because you're presenting pretty quickly after you've heard something. you're trying to give really concise feedback, and you're trying to give it in a way that will help everyone in the audience, not just the speaker. So it is a really excellent way to develop your communication skills and your active listening skills through that evaluation process. I wonder, what piece of advice would you give to someone who is, maybe thinking about joining? Alistair, you said it took you about a year to come along. So what advice would you give someone who's thinking maybe in that process that you were?
Oh, my advice would be to visit a couple of clubs. So most local areas, you've got several. So I'm in Aylesbury, there's Aylesbury speakers, we've got St Albans speakers, we've got Berkhamsted speakers. So there's quite a lot that I could access locally, and each club has its own flavour, I would say. So find the flavour that suits you, because one club might be more formal, another might put more emphasis on comedy. Aylesbury speakers certainly puts a lot of emphasis on community. And then obviously we have online specialist clubs like Sussex Online Speakers, Shilling Speakers, that again, each have their own flavour. So if you've tried one and you think, oh, it's too formal, that doesn't mean you don't like Toastmasters. That just means that club perhaps doesn't fit your vibe at that time. And there's more out there to do. So sample a few, I would say. What about you, Olga?
What I would say to anybody is stop waiting, just do it. Toastmasters is incredible. It's more than just about public speaking. It's about development, and it's stepping out of your comfort zone, but it's in a safe environment. So it's not a scary place, and everybody's behind you. And what I thought the huge thing for me is it's changed my mindset. And they say success in life is 80% mindset, 20% skills. So get the skills. You'll get that in Toastmasters, but what you'll do is you'll get the mindset in a great, wonderful environment. So that would be my thing. Don't wait anymore. Just do it. Amy, what do you think?
Oh, I absolutely agree, Olga. What that made me think of was aptitude or attitude, right? Mm. So I think my attitude towards things is totally different now. And that comes from going to meetings and really, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone a lot. So I would recommend, if you're very nervous about attending and you're worried, please reach out to your local clubs. As Alistair said, go and get a flavour of the clubs that you can get to, or online clubs if you're interested. You can go to Toastmasters website, toastmasters.org, and there's a find a club button there, and you can look up where your local clubs are through that. But when you reach out to those clubs, if you're super nervous, some of those members would probably be happy to have a cup of coffee with you, meet you half an hour before the meeting, so that you feel you've got someone in your corner. Or you could do what Olga did, and she came along with a friend, it sounds like. So maybe drag a friend along who's a little bit more confident than you possibly, and that make it a bit more comfortable. But I guarantee you, once you walk in the door, you will realize, like, oh, do you know what? These people are really amazing, because the clubs really are a safe place, and we're all there to support each other and help each other grow. I would love to hear from Alistair. Being, the industry that you work in has, for Sussex Online Speakers, that's really directly related. So I'd love to hear about your experience in that industry with hybrid and online meetings and events. How are you, how's that changing? Are speakers adapting? And, do you think Toastmasters really has offered you a way to support the professionals you're working with?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Amy. I think I have this real mindset of practice what you preach. So a bit more about my background and my employed role. I produce speakers and have them join live sessions like this, but I'm very much backstage in that role. I don't normally take the front of the stage as I am speaking today. But speakers all the time would, join these online sessions, all the tech would be set up, and then they'd be asking for speaking tips. And I'd be like, well, never sat in your shoes, but I can assume that you might like to do X, Y, and Z. So my main reason for joining SOS and regularly practicing online speaking skills myself is to have that empathy with the clients that I'm helping, especially speaking to an online audience. I'm sure we can all relate in Zoom meetings, Teams meetings. It's very difficult to keep an attendee's or an audience's attention online, because we can be so distracted by, laptops, we've got our own emails in the background, we've got WhatsApp messages. So attendees, you're competing with a lot going on in their local environment. Whereas if you're speaking in a conference room, there's still distractions, but you've got a more captured audience there. So there's an importance to carry yourself as an online speaker, be a very engaging online speaker. And also there's a required level of being adapt and understanding the technology, and that's an online club is another great way to do that. I try out all sorts of different things in our Sussex Online Speakers meetings, different ways of mixing in the visuals, trying those out for myself so that then I can understand. And if it goes a bit wonky, that's okay, because as Olga has said, Toastmasters is a safe environment to try these things, and it would be an understanding environment, and all that I would get is the feedback about how to make that better and how to make it work, and then I can go on to work on those methods with my clients. So understanding the technology and understanding the audience type is really important for me for online speaking.
Wow, that's great insight, Alistair. What about the remote working piece? So, it's not just these sort of live events, but, meetings between teams. Now, you work way more remotely than I do. So do you think Toastmasters has helped you in that aspect, in the more, I guess, personal size meetings?
Oh, absolutely, yes. And it's a good point, because in this remote speaking or in this remote working culture, technically we're all online speakers because we're catching up with our teams, we're going to our all hands or our company meetings virtually. So these skills are applicable to everyone, not just virtual online event speakers. If that's your career, obviously it's more important, but for remote workers, it's still important to be able to communicate over these means and connect with your team. So building on what you were saying earlier, it's really helped me from a leadership perspective. When you combine the leadership skills that Toastmasters teaches in general, adding that onto an online meeting like Sussex Online Speakers, that combined with the leadership has been a really good way for me to learn how to manage a team remotely and communicate with them remotely. Because remote speakers, they're very trusted employees, of course, because they're in their home environment, and it's about managing them with the right amount of trust and with the right amount of autonomy for them to go about their daily business, but also making sure that you as a line manager are aware of everything else that's going on. And that is a very, very fine balance. But learning to speak online and to communicate properly with the empowering language that Toastmasters teaches us about giving feedback in a constructive and neutral way it's just been, I have no words. It's just been so helpful.
Yeah, great. That's really good perspective. Olga, I think with your job, where you're in a consulting role, I guess you are trying to deliver all sorts of communication online as well. So do you think online public speaking through Toastmasters has helped you improve or adapt?
I know it's been hugely helpful, because yes, it's all online what I do. So I would meet, it's a one-to-one. So it's just, you learn everything in Toastmasters, just empathy, active listening. Again, the evaluations that both Alistair and Amy have mentioned, it's great. You're just listening really well. You're picking up the nuances in conversation. It gives you those skills that go beyond and dig deep into the conversations. And again, doing a couple of presentations online, it's, as Alistair said, trying to get the audience engaged. There's no point in, as I call it, death by PowerPoint. You have to give a lot of yourself, some slides, very little writing on it. It's you, the people have come to see. It's getting, especially if you're presenting, getting stories in there. Even though it's nutrition, you're going, what sort of story could you do with that? You find a way, you make it fun, you make it interesting. I think Toastmasters have taught me that, rather than sitting up there, not reading. You get comfortable with your subject, you get it into yourself, and then you get it into your audience. And again, Toastmasters are big into having a message every time you speak. So with me, I'll have a message at the end of my presentations that I want the audience to go away with. Not that they've been bored to death, but I want them to go, yes, that really struck a vein with me. And that's really what I feel Toastmasters just gets to the nub of. So Amy, that's my take on remote working.
Oh, that's interesting you said there about reading, because I think there is space and availability to read when you're presenting online rather than absorbing that information. And I know it's something that I was guilty of when we first started Sussex Online Speakers. Sometimes I would not take the time to hone a speech enough to be confident with it, to run with it without my notes. And I think it's quite obvious when you're reading. Alistair, do you find that with speakers in the industry that some of them are reading and you can really tell?
Definitely. Yeah, I was nodding vigorously along to what Olga was saying, because PowerPoint is like a crutch, or slides in general is a crutch that people rely on, and it sometimes needs to be kicked away, because some people, I think, might have the illusion that they are good at public speaking or that they're able to handle it, but what they are relying on is reading off of that PowerPoint, reading off of those slides, and that's not the way to connect with an audience. And absolutely, I think that being an online speaker, part of the temptation is to just have something up to read from. And this for me all boils down to, again, what Olga was saying on about having a purpose behind what you're saying. Rather than just writing a paragraph or an essay of things that you want to say, start with the message that you want to leave people with, and then build around that. And then if you're really connected to that message, then the content will come it should come quite naturally to you to be able to discuss around it. And you're right, people, you can notice that you're reading off something, but also I think an audience connects better to something that has a little imperfection, that doesn't feel fully rehearsed, fully scripted. Like, even if you could make eye contact with the camera the whole time and read me a 1,000-word essay verbatim and look me dead in the eye, that's not engaging, because it's just something that you've learned. You have to connect with that audience, have a bit of back and forth, even if it's not vocal, but there needs to be some kind of connection. And I think a bit of vulnerability always helps with a little bit of connection and relation, certainly for an online speaker.
Well, that's what they say about leadership as well, isn't it? I think the best leaders are always vulnerable, and that means people identify with them and they want to listen to what they have to say, rather than feeling that that leader portrays a standing on a pedestal type of person. And I think we've all changed a lot in the last few decades, and we want vulnerability, we want real people, not a painted picture of perfection from speakers, from leaders, from anyone in our lives.
Absolutely.
Going back to the speaking in a virtual world, Alistair, it's not just about live public speaking, such as what we're doing today, but there's lots of other ways that people are speaking online. And what's been your experience in that? I know you do a podcast, for example. What are other ways that people speak and that it goes out online, maybe that isn't quite live?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really common. Before we were going live, we were just talking about social media presence, and one of our leadership team and how much social media presence they have. Olga was commenting on how much she noticed it. And I think that nowadays everyone kind of has a personal brand. Everyone's sort of posting on social media about, what they're doing and how they're doing it, and it's not always, as you say, in a live environment. It could be a podcast. We've got loads of friends and people in Toastmasters that run podcasts. Also doing video content like YouTube channels, or just any kind of video content that you're putting out on social media. And that's a skill in itself. I suppose it's not public speaking in the sense that it's not live, but it will be public, so has an audience. And again, I think people fall into the same traps of wanting to get the script completely perfect to the video, wanting to get the podcast completely perfect. But I think injecting a bit of conversationality into those is always a good idea. Whether you're interviewing a guest, make sure that those questions are nice and open-ended. Or if you're doing a video, perhaps recording to camera, have an idea in mind and then talk around that, flow naturally. Don't sort of beat yourself up if you're not hitting every single bullet point, because remember, those bullet points that you've got, only you can see them. Your audience isn't looking at a checklist being like, oh, well, his script said this and he didn't tick that off. So doing it in a different order or in an improv kind of way is totally okay, and that is more connected. And for me, that's what things like table topics at Toastmasters really help with, because you get given a topic and you can run with it, and you know how to pace yourself, you know not to use filler words, and you know how to structure that. I think that's really helpful for a social media content creator or for a podcast type format.
Well, that's really good insight, Alistair. I think I'm someone who absolutely loves to waste some time watching TikTok and reels and stories. And definitely sometimes even some of my favorite creators online, I sometimes think, I wish they would just get to the point a bit quicker with what they have to say. Or sometimes they're sharing something that's really interesting, but I can imagine if they just maybe just the message they're trying to get across isn't quite succinct enough. So that is such a growing industry, and Toastmasters is a place where they can practice to a slightly smaller audience than when they go live through social media. Speaking of that smaller audience, when we started Sussex Online Speakers, as you'll see in my virtual background there, Connect from Anywhere was the plug that we wanted, because we really still wanted to have that sense of community that Toastmasters clubs bring, despite the fact that we knew we'd have members all over the world. And at the moment, we've got members for Sussex Online Speakers from Ireland, like Olga, from all over the UK, like Alistair and I, from parts of Africa. We've got a member in Turkey, the US. We've had a member from Sri Lanka. And so, but we still have that sense of community in the club, and that is what creates the safe space. So, Olga, I'd love to hear, your thoughts about the safe space and the impact of that to our membership and within the club.
Yeah, great question, Amy. What's brilliant is, yes, there's a sense of community. When you arrive, say you log into a Sussex Online Speakers, the moment you get there, it's a really friendly atmosphere. Our lovely president, Lucy, is a big welcome. She's not there. Somebody else is there to welcome you and explains it all as we're going along. So you might think you're probably listening and you're probably hearing these great speeches and going, oh my God, these guys are great. And I'm no way like this. But those guys all started where you are. Dreadful, had no idea. And it's important for you to just realize that. So you will get a chance. You'll be asked to step out of your comfort zone when you're ready. And I would suggest go for it, because you'll do a speech. You'll get a lovely evaluation. With it, it's not a bad one. It's always very positive, but there are some suggestions and challenges in there. And that everybody in that room has been through that process. And it's really important to understand that. I always think when you join Toastmasters, you're like the guy down in the local pub doing karaoke. As you go through it, you can become a Freddie Mercury. So it's something that you pick up these skills, but it's in a safe place. You don't want to do it out in the real world. Come into us, do it, make the mistakes, fail. Fail is where growth happens. Do that, and you'll be amazed at the growth that you will come across. So, Amy, back to you.
Failing up, right?
Yeah.
It's okay to make a few mistakes to improve. That's a good analogy, and something to think about within the club is, when we have guests who come along, we try and engage them. So we have a half-hour introduction session, don't we, Alistair, where everyone can sort of just socialize, connect before we leap into that more formal meeting environment. We're not too formal at Sussex Online. So do you find that's quite useful for you, Alistair, to connect with new guests or members that you're not as familiar with? Olga, are you still there?
I'm still there. Yeah, I thought I was frozen, but no, it's Alistair.
No, Alistair.
Apologies, I am back.
Oh, yeah, there you are.
There you go. Look, we're learning lessons as we go. This is how you pull off a technical difficulty. I believe I caught the question. It was about the icebreaker that we do at the start, Amy. And I think that part of why we're such a strong community at SOS is because everyone has a chance to participate in the meeting. So table topics we've already talked about, and that does pull on some members on an improv basis that perhaps don't have roles. But we always have an icebreaker at the very beginning, or it's called called a warm-up act in some other clubs, where everyone has the opportunity to speak. And it's a very quick, very simple question that everyone would feel comfortable and probably have an answer to. Just a 5-second response, so that ice is broken and that people are already connecting. And by the time that we get to table topics or some of the other input items, people, because they've done that icebreaker and they've sort of done a little bit of speaking themselves and been involved, they feel more empowered to take participation in the larger items or the table topics that require a bit more thought. So it's all about breaking that ice and slowly easing people in based on their comfort level. But that part of that community and part of that empowerment for me for SOS is that everybody gets a voice in that one icebreaker section at the start of the meeting.
That's a good perspective. I've never thought of calling it an icebreaker section, but that is pretty much what it is. Now, we've hit 10:30 and I've had a great time chatting to Olga and Alistair. Now, a reminder to everyone watching that our club is Sussex Online Speakers. You can find us via our website, sussexonlinespeakers.club, and the /events there means you can sign up to any meeting and you'll get a message, an email on the Zoom link so you can dial in and join us. When you're thinking about joining Toastmasters, as we've said today, please feel free to reach out to many clubs. Go to toastmasters.org, find a club, and we hope you'll find a club that works for you. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.